A fly. A glass solid that shouldn't exist. And a code hidden in plain sight for 500 years. This is one painting with 3 mysteries, and the smallest detail might be the one that cracks them all. This is the portrait of Luca Pacioli, supposedly signed by Jacopo de Barbari in 1495. That's what the cartouche says anyway, but here's the thing, the signature doesn't fit. The fly doesn't match. And something in the glass hanging above them shouldn't exist in 1500. Start with the painting itself. What you see at first glance, a Franciscan friar stands behind a table. That's Luca Pacioli, the most famous mathematician in Italy, author of the Summa di Arithmetica, and a close friend of Leonardo da Vinci. He's teaching, or demonstrating, or showing off. Look at the table. Compass, set square, ink and quill, a slate covered with geometric diagrams. Notice anything missing? No paint, no brushes. This isn't an artist's table, it's a mathematician's. And that's the first clue. An open copy of Euclid's Elements, a red-bound volume. That's Pacioli's own compendium. And sitting on top of it, a dodecahedron, every tool of Renaissance mathematics gathered in one place. But your eye doesn't stop there. It moves up. Suspended from the ceiling by a thin red cord hangs a glass rhombicuboctahedron. 26 faces, 18 squares, 8 equilateral triangles, half filled with water, and the reflections across its surface show the ducal palace of Urbino with photographic accuracy. That's mystery number 1. Then there's the young man standing beside Pacioli, hand on his hip, watching, silent. Nobody knows who he is. Dürer? A duke, someone else entirely? That's mystery number 2. And on the table, a small cartouche, supposedly a signature, but the date doesn't match the evidence, and a fly sitting on the cartouche. That's mystery number 3. 3 mysteries, but they're not separate, they're connected, and the fly is the key. But it took one researcher 400 years of silence and a decade of obsession to prove it. The glass solid hanging from the ceiling by a thin red cord wasn't just mathematical, it was sacred. Renaissance mathematicians believed these forms revealed a hidden order beneath the visible world. Geometry was the language the universe was written in. This isn't a random shape either, it's an Archimedean solid, one of only 13 forms where every single corner looks identical no matter which way you turn it. Symmetrical from every angle. To a Renaissance mind, that kind of perfection didn't happen by accident. It proved something. It proved math and beauty were built from the same material, that God used geometry as the blueprint for everything. So when you see this shape hanging above Pacioli's head, dripping with reflected light, you're not looking at a prop. You're looking at an argument. The universe has an order, and the man standing under the glass is the one who can read it. Here's the problem. Renaissance artists didn't paint like this. Light bends through water. Reflections shift across curved glass. The precision here, the way the palace windows appear distorted correctly, the way the waterline interacts with the glass, this is something that shouldn't exist in 1500. One scholar put it this way: we surely see the ineffable left hand of Leonardo da Vinci. The left hand. Maybe a nod to the fact Leonardo really was left-handed, maybe just a turn of phrase. Either way, the brushwork doesn't match Jacopo de Barbari's known style. It's too precise, too mathematical, too knowing. Here's how they knew each other. Leonardo and Pacioli collaborated on De Divina Proportione, a study of the golden ratio that Pacioli believed underlay both art and nature. They started the work in Milan around 1496, while Leonardo was still finishing The Last Supper a few streets away. Pacioli handled the theory. Leonardo handled the shapes, 60 of them in total, each one drawn twice, once as a solid form, once as a hollow skeleton so students could see the structure holding itself up from the inside. It took years to finish. The book did not get published until 1509, almost a decade after this painting was made. And out of all 60 drawings, one shape got the most attention: the rhombicuboktahedron. Leonardo drew it solid, then he drew it hollow. And it's the same exact shape floating above Pacioli's head in this painting, just swapped from ink to glass, from paper to water. But Leonardo wasn't the only one who could paint this. There's another possibility, and it involves the man standing next to Pacioli. The young man watches Pacioli, hand on his hip, silent, unidentified, centuries of scholars staring at him, and nobody can agree on his name. Theory 1. Guidobaldo da Montefeltro, Duke of Urbino. Makes sense, the palace reflected in the glass above him is his. He was a patron of mathematics. He had the money and the motive to commission this painting. Clean, simple, logical. Theory 2, an unnamed courtier from this Sforza circle. Less known, less evidence. A theory that floats around academic footnotes but never quite lands. Theory 3, Albrecht Dürer. This one changes everything. 3 theories, and only one of them changes the entire history of European art. Guess which one? Dürer traveled to Italy specifically to learn the mathematical secrets of Renaissance art. He wanted to understand perspective, proportion, the geometry that made Italian painting look like it was seeing the world for the first time. He'd write later in his own notebooks that the Italians had a secret system for getting the human body right, and nobody back home in Nuremberg could teach it to him. So he crossed the Alps looking for it. Once around 1494, again in the early 1500s. Both trips led to Venice. On that first trip, Dürer crossed paths with Jacopo de Barbari in Venice. Some historians think Barbari is who first showed him Pacioli's ideas. Now look at what happened next. Less than a decade later, Dürer created Melancholia Thouars, one of the most famous engravings in history. At its center, a mysterious geometric solid, nicknamed Dürer's solid ever since, sitting there like a riddle carved in stone. Historians still argue over the exact shape, whether Dürer copied it straight or twisted it on purpose to hide something of his own. But nobody argues about where the obsession came from. It came from Italy. It came from this exact room, this table full of compasses and slates and a glass solid hanging from the ceiling. If the young man is Dürer, this painting becomes something bigger than a portrait. It becomes a meeting point, a transfer of knowledge from Italy to the north, the moment Renaissance mathematics crossed the Alps and changed European art forever. But the real bomb isn't the man. It's the piece of paper on the table, the cartouche, the fly, and the inscription that's been hiding something for half a millennium. The small cartouche on the table reads, Iaco, Bar, Vigenis, P, 1495. Jacopo Barbari, 1495. For centuries that looked like a simple signature. Case closed, except it's not. Start with that word Vigenis. Scholars connect it to the Latin word for 20, Viginti, meaning Barbari, signed himself as a young man in his 20s. But Barbari was already an established artist by the 1490s. If that reading is right, the math doesn't work. Second, details in the painting point to a later date. Pacioli's clothing, the specific edition of Euclid shown on the table. Small things, but they add up. Most scholars now think this painting was made a few years later than that, closer to 1500. And third, the fly. Why paint a fly directly on top of your own signature? In Renaissance art, flies meant things. They were trompe-l'oeil displays of skill. Look how real this insect looks. Look how it fools your eye. They were symbols of decay and mortality, Memento mori reminders that everything beautiful rots. Not on the table, not on the book. On the inscription, some researchers think the fly is a pointer. Like the painter wanted you to look harder at what's underneath. Like he was saying, you're reading this wrong, try again. Enter Carla Glori, Italian researcher, 2020. She spent more than a decade on this one painting. Not a decade on Renaissance art in general, a decade on this single canvas. Her conclusion? The inscription isn't a signature, it's a cryptogram. And the fly is part of the puzzle. Here's how she cracked it. Glori started with the Latin word for fly, musca. She took its letters and combined them with the letters of the inscription. Then she started searching for hidden patterns. Thousands of combinations, years of work. Most of them led nowhere, but one name kept emerging. Vinci, Leonardo, da Vinci, the full decoded phrase she arrived at. Rogatus ab acum sine Vinci. Roughly translated, you seek answers from the abacus without Vinci. Or maybe, are you doing your calculations without Leonardo? A hidden signature, a private joke buried in plain sight. Leonardo's presence in this painting, not through a brushstroke, but through a code. The fly wasn't an accident. It was the cipher key. If this is real, the implications are massive. Leonardo didn't just paint the glass object. He may have built himself into the inscription itself, a signature hidden inside a joke instead of a brushstroke. He's in the room, but he's invisible. That's very Leonardo. But here's the thing, it's impossible to prove. The cryptogram is a theory, a compelling one. A decade of research, but still a theory. There's no second document confirming it, no letter from Pacioli saying Leonardo hid a joke in our portrait. Just the painting itself sitting there refusing to confirm or deny. And maybe that's the point. Some paintings survive because they give answers. This one survives because it keeps asking questions. Most Renaissance portraits get solved eventually. A signature turns up, a letter surfaces, an X-ray settles the argument. This one just keeps producing more questions every time someone gets close to an answer. Carla Glori cracked one word, and even if she's wrong, even if the fly really is just a fly, somebody still has to explain how a Renaissance painter rendered glass and water, and light bending through both, with an accuracy that shouldn't exist for another 300 years. One last look at the painting. Look at the fly again. Right there. Painted on top of the inscription 500 years, and nobody asked why. Now you know, or at least you know what one researcher spent a decade finding. The painting is still alive. Not because we solved it, but because we haven't. That's the kind of mystery that keeps you looking. Did you see the fly before today? Let me know in the comments. Deliberate or accident? 500 years later, the painting is still asking the questions. That's the kind of mystery that keeps you looking.